Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's special selection comes at us from Eric. In 2007, Joanna Newsom released a live in studio EP following her 2006 album Ease, featuring her live touring band, titled Joanna Newsom and the E Street Band. It featured live recordings of 2 songs from her previous releases, as well as this song, Colleen, which is exclusive to the EP. Now, Eric also gave me a lot more backstory information, some liner notes, and all that, but I didn't want to spoil the reaction too much. So I'm saving that to explore later after we listen to the song. This music video that was given, though, is a montage. I believe the audio is the studio version off of the disc, but the video is just live footage that they have found and have synced up to the audio. At least that's what the description says. I'm hoping the audio is good. Let's dive into this and see what Joanna Newsom is bringing to the table with Colleen. Yeah, the audio sounds fine. Very folky. Interesting. Yeah, interesting harmonies are trying. The phrasing is also very interesting. Yeah, like leading up to that, we emphasize 2 and 4 with accented hits. But then it's like, it expands an extra bar and a half. It's so strange. Yeah. So it is the extension of the phrase. Yeah. So I think we're doing 2 bars of 4/4, where bars, the back end of 8, 9, and 10 are all super dissonant. But like the accent pattern shifts drastically there too, so Yeah, the texture layering there is nice though. I like the lute and the harp playing together.
You dare to speak a lady's name. He says my lady is mistaken. I would not speak a name in this place, and if I were to try in the wind, I swear would rise to tear you clean from me without a trace of you come then to rescue me.
Even when I know it's coming, it's still such a bizarre movement from the first loop to the second. It's interesting too, I'm picking up on this. The melody she plays on the harp, the higher melody, is harmonious with her vocals. It's the underlying harmonic line, the lower bassier notes, that introduce the tension in those moments. And the pushing to all like offbeat accents, man, it's just... And then back to this folkier sounds. Dang, man. You know what's crazy too is like every time that I think I have seen peak Joanna, and I'm like, this is just so complex and yet still very palatable as far as being on the popular side of folk. You know, it's very singer-songwriter stuff. Uh, and just like, no, she she still finds a way to blow me away. And yeah, it's just another one of those songs, I guess. It's just, how is somebody so consistent? It's just ridiculous. Anyways, the first thing I want to bring up, and I'll tell you this, right? Anybody who's coming to this channel first time ever, and you're like, oh yeah, I like Joanna Newsom. Here's a composer. He's gonna tell me what's up. You know, it said analysis in the video title. Yeah, I don't know that I'm gonna have answers though. When it comes to Joanna Newsom, I'm known to say some rather profound things about it, but at the time, I don't know that they're really that profound. And very rarely do I walk away from one of her songs feeling like I get it and I'm in a position to explain to everyone else what the song is about. So, yeah, you just be along on the roller coaster ride for me. Or I suppose with me, because we're going to talk about some interesting things, but I don't think any of us are really going to have a really strong grasp on this by the end of the video. Though, as I mentioned, we'll be talking about some cool stuff going on. So, first thing I want to bring up, though, is rhythm. We do have a drummer in here. They have some cool folk-style drums, just stretched drum head over, it looked like wooden rims. We have some fuzzy mallets that go along with that. The end result is, to me, something that kind of sounds like it would take the place of a timpani more so than toms or a snare drum or anything like that. Um, but it's very, very sparse. Like, honestly, go back, listen to the track, and focus in entirely on the drum work, and you'll realize there's just not a lot of it. You see, a lot of the groove, a lot of the beat come from the strings. Both the lute and the harp are exceptionally percussive. There's a quick fluctuation between non accented notes and accented notes, and the mix of both of those, especially with the um, syncopation of those accented notes, create the core groove. Honestly, the drummer's there to form a backbeat, if anything else, just to give a bit of a low end sound to the song, because without it, we have the lute and the harp, and while they both have a range of notes, they tend to not get into the range that the drummer has. And it allows the drummer to create this floor, this sonic bed to the song where everything else can exist above it. But as far as the drummer, the percussion player doing things that drummers typically do in modern music, no, not really. A lot of the percussive information and rhythmic information comes from our two string players, but also a little bit from the vocals. The vocals have interesting inflections and accentuation points as well that sometimes run in line with one of the other instruments and sometimes runs in opposition to them. And even, bringing up the harp and the lute, I said that they give us our rhythmic information, but even that isn't always unified. Sometimes the harp will accent beat one and the guitar will accent the and of one, half of a beat later. And so it creates the syncopation both in accented note but also texture or timbre, the note of the sound. While they are both plucked strings, the harp and the lute have very different characteristics to their sound. They're also placed differently in the mix, and so it does create this spaciousness between accented hits. That's also going to be information that we take in when we understand the groove of a song. It is kind of bonkers between the three of those, the lute, the harp, and the vocals, how much rhythmic information is at play. How much information we're getting based on unaccented notes, accented notes, placement in the mix. It's just so much, honestly. And it's not even just rhythmic information either. Of course, they're all playing pitched notes. So we have melody coming through them. Occasionally, and well, not occasionally, frequently, we have multiple melodic lines coming through, whether it is a cyclical riff or pattern from the lute or the harp. Maybe it is a linear line coming from the vocals, just consistently growing in a specific direction. There is always multiple melodic lines going on. And so we have the concept of counterpoint here, on top of all the all the rhythmic information we're getting from these three instruments. But we are also getting harmonic information as all of these notes are forming together. They aren't always presented in stacks of chords. It's not necessarily that the harp plays three notes and lets it ring out and says, oh, there's a chord. Or that the harp will play one note, the vocals will sing another, the lute will play one, and they'll hold them out and you get this nice static chord. But our ears are going to take in all the flurry of notes and attribute a general sound to them. This all happens subconsciously. And we'll take all that information and suss out a chord. You might not be able to name it, but you'll be able to feel it. You can hear that parts of these songs are brighter and happier, and that others are more mellow, and that others are tense and dark. They're not playing chords per se, but you can hear all the notes coming at you, and your brain susses out what the general feeling is. Or, in other words, what that chord is. And so, really, between the three of them, We're getting the rhythmic, the harmonic, and the melodic all at once. It is a lot of information to take in, and it comes out at the listener in a flurry. Honestly, like listen back or rewind back or open a new tab and listen to it at full volume and stuff like that, whatever you want to do. And just listen to how frequent these notes are being played and even sung. Joanna, I would say, sings a little bit slower. That is, she allows some notes to be held out quite a bit longer than the two string instruments tend to play, but she does have some faster runs too, especially with her slurs, just starting on a note and running down or running up to the next note. It is, if you break it down on paper, it's going to be a lot of black ink on that sheet music. There's a lot of stuff going on for the moderate tempo that it's at. So, yeah, I mean, that right there, not even from a performative aspect, but compositional, of having 2 to 3 main instruments present and them also sort of being the only instruments present other than the drummer, who's a bit more muted, reserved in what they're playing. I mean, that's impressive. Like I said, just from a compositional standpoint. Now, if this was just, there's multiple melody lines and they're also the rhythmic and harmonic information, I mean, that'd already be pretty cool, but Joanna went one step further, didn't she? She added some oddities to this. Not just melodic, not just harmonic, but also rhythmic. All 3 points. So, the song's in 4/4. When we get to the end of bar 8, which is a typical end of a phrase, a lot of phrasing in music is in 4-bar phrases or in multiples of it. 4-bar, 8-bar, 12's a little odd, but 16 and 24 and 32. Those are really the lengths of most ideas. The larger ones tend to get utilized more specifically in specific kinds of music, like jazz. Likes to use 24 and 32 for solo sections. But in a lot of popular mainstream musics, whether that's pop, metal, rock, hip hop, whatever, you're most likely looking at 4 or 8. And here we do 8 plus 2. We go for the 10, which is not another group of 4. That would put us at 12, which, like I said, 12 can be a little odd because it's 3 groups of the 4 bars, which is an odd number. Usually you'd push it up to the 16, but regardless, we don't even do that. We go to 10. So it creates this feeling of only getting half of another phrase, half of another 4-bar block, which makes the repetition feel like it starts over in the middle of the phrase. It makes it feel like we aren't getting the end of that. There's no resolution to it, or it's lasted too long. We have too much of the resolution, whichever way your brain interprets it. But beyond that, we also have a rhythmic change. We go from emphasizing the 2 and 4 backbeat to emphasizing offbeats, the places between 2 beats. So not only pacing wise are things disruptive, but even our understanding of the rhythmic phrasing is disrupted and replaced with something else. This ties into the melody, where the vocal line that she sings gets altered in ways to support this new accent pattern. And beyond that, we have brand new notes. Again, as I mentioned during the reaction, what she sings and what she plays in the upper register are both harmonious, but what she plays in the lower register creates a foundational element that clashes heavily with that dyad that she has up top. And this clash creates a lot of darkness through harmonic tension, which is dissonance. It's so wild to me that she decides this song needs so much of it upended at one time, only to revert it all back. After we hit the end of bar 10 and start over again, we return back to the harmonious positivity. We return back to the emphasized 2 and 4 from our drummer. We return back to the original accent pattern on the three main instruments. There is another upset that comes towards the end of some of these phrases. I think it's right before we head into the chorus, but a lot of this song sounds very similar-ish to me, which happens frequently in folk and folk-adjacent popular music. So I'm not exactly sure what the structure is. To me, it feels like an AAB thing where we get two verses and then a chorus, but honestly, it all sort of blends together to me, so that's really only a guess based off of my gut from listening to it. Either that or we have a very long verse and a very short chorus comparative. But there is a point sometimes after we hit that bar 9 and 10 where we have all the dissonance brought in. We'll come out of it for 2 bars, but instead of starting the whole phrase over again, we'll take 2 bars of positivity to move back to 2 bars of dissonance. This feels like a transition kind of idea that takes us into the next section, which I believe to be the chorus, which is why I think it primarily happens only at the end of the verse moving into the next section. But I think I only heard it twice across the 6-minute runtime, and it didn't happen at all during the extended bridge. So, again, I'm not exactly sure about the structure 100% to say what that portion is, but I do think it's interesting that she takes a moment to create this small cycle, giving us a condensed form of the back and forth between the harmonious and the dissonant. And it all works on some level. It takes a bit, right? It is a hurdle. It creates friction in the listening. It is unexpected. But honestly, not even halfway through, I got to a point of just expecting it, and it begins to work. Is it still abrasive? Yeah. By the end of it, it's still a part where I'm like, ugh, I don't like this feeling of tension and dissonance that she creates. It's a very sharp contrast. But I'm used to it. I'm expecting it. It makes sense within the flow of the song. It's wild for something so disruptive for me to reach that point with it in only 6 minutes. I think that speaks to how great of a composition it is and how intentful the dissonance is, not just the fact of, measuring how much to use, but how to implement it and how all the various parts come together to create this massive disheveling going on there. In a way that works rather than just simply being disruptive for disruptive sake. There is a measured response there. There are a couple of things I don't have a lot of analysis to put to, but I do want to shine a little spotlight on. One is I liked the lute solo in the bridge. It was a nice moment to kind of reel the song back, to provide a moment to breathe. We didn't have to worry about contending with this dissonance every once in a while. We didn't have to worry about this odd phrasing popping up. We didn't have to worry about shifting accent patterns. The song decided to be static and stationary for, 30 seconds, 40 seconds or so, and just allow us to sit in this one moment and have this beautiful lute line going on. Great pacing melodically on the lute. I thought that it did a great job of evoking a narrative element. It's a very tasteful solo. And it was just a moment to really breathe. And as soon as she brought the vocals back in, I was like, okay, the breather's over. We're back in the game. And sure enough, we were back to another verse. And we had this back and forth between the positive and the negative sounds. So I enjoyed that little break right there. She has this wonderful little ad-lib vocalization she does every once in a while where she has this punctuated staccato, just like a little whoop or a holler or something. And it's so good. It cuts through everything, but the pitch of it is what stands out to me. The pitch and the character of it, the sounding. To me, it almost sounds like a whistle tone. It doesn't have the full body of something that would be like a chest voice, but it also is lacking the etherealness of a head voice. And it doesn't quite feel like a mixed head and chest either. I'm not quite sure. It has more body than I would expect for the range. So I don't know what's going on there. It's my ear, or sorry, my gut says it's a whistle tone sort of thing. I don't know if she has perfect control over that, just to kind of say, yeah, I can make a whistle tone whoop anytime I want. I mean, maybe she does. Again, just another fascinating thing about her. But yeah, I'm curious if there's anybody who's done any vocal coach or analyst who has done this song, has some insight into that, or maybe just anybody in the community who happens to have that knowledge off the top of their head. Let me know, because I'm really curious about that one specific tone. Um, I think that's about it. Yeah, let's hit some lyrics, which I'm always afraid to get into with Joanna, but let's take a stab at it and see what kind of meaninglessness I can pull from it, because I tell you, she has a way with words and it usually goes right over my head. Well, I think this is the most straightforward Joanna Newsom track I've ever explored lyrically. However, don't let that fool you. That doesn't mean it is without depth. It simply means that, at least on the surface, the story can be understood from that very surface level concept. There is quite a bit of depth, especially as you dive more into Joanna Newsom's lyrics. There's crossplay with a lot of other songs that she has written. But on the surface level, at least, we have a story of a woman who is eventually given the name Colleen, who was lost at sea, woke up on shore by this town with amnesia. Eric did give me some description of this, so actually this is really good. I will read this instead. It says it's about a lost woman who, after washing ashore in a state of amnesia, slowly regains memory of her life as a whale. Yeah, that's a much better way of summing that up. Eric says that the song engages with themes of civilization and the repressed unconscious animal nature of humanity, though there are more themes that are up for interpretation. And yeah, I mean, we have concepts of femininity and here in feminism in general, which Joanna Newsom likes to write a lot about. We also have a concept of water and returning to the water from whence we came, which also water shows up a lot in Joanna's writing, at least in my experience. Maybe it's just the narrow selection of songs I've explored, but I mean, this immediately makes me think of Divers, which was really interesting because it was about a woman's relationship with the water, a place she could never go, but dreamed of going. And that the water was used for a totally different metaphor, actually. Still water, though. Yeah, something with water, Joanna. I don't know. Shows up a lot. So, anyways, it's a rather linear story here. The first verse says, I tell it as best I know how, and that's the way it was told to me. Must have once been a thief or a whore, then surely was thrown overboard, where they say I came their way from the deep blue sea. So she was out to water, and the crew of a boat accused her of being a thief or a whore and ended up throwing her overboard. She winds up on the shores of this town with no knowledge of anything else, which is stated here. It says it picked me up, the deep blue sea, and tossed me round. I lost my shoes and tore my gown, forgot my name, and drowned. Then woke up with the surf a pounding. It seemed I had been run aground. It talks about how a bunch of people cleaned her up and taught her the ways of society. They taught her prayers of chastity. They gave her the name Colleen and said that she was blessed to have forgotten everything prior. She speaks about having difficulties fitting in. They taught her how to till plants, but she could never get anything to come from it. No roots, nor leaf, nor flowers, nor bean. says she overwatered everything and that she hates the sight of the empty air. She does not feel blessed among Colleens. She had a dream about newly born babies, but last night she had a different dream about a whale, a gray and sloped shouldered thing. And it asks her, "What is that around your waist? Is that my very own baleen?" Which is a type of whalebone, which I guess, based on some, well, I don't guess, I assume that the annotations are accurate here, that corsets were made out of whale bones at one point in history. And he's like, "No, have you forgotten everything?" So it was a dream that basically said, "What are you doing on land with this life here? Don't you remember where you came from?" Um, I like this part. She meets a traveler, a boat traveler, and he has a picture. He has a book of pictures, and in there shows a whale with a tusk a meter long. And so she asks, "What's the name of it?" He says its name translates roughly to "he who easily can curve himself against the sky," which is like, dude, that's a cool name. So I checked it out, and it's actually a Greenland Inuit translation. I can't pronounce the phrase itself from Greenland Inuit, but it does translate to that, give or take. In the same language, it seems, Colleen is a translation for the name girl. There's a very big difference between how the woman is given a name of something so basic, but this beast of the sea is given a name so majestic. Again, tying into some of the feminist areas that Joanna tends to sing about. But at this point, Colleen basically hates everything and vocalizes all of it. And she's ready to leave. And so we end this track with a stanza that says, "Then dive down there with the lights to lead that seem to shine from everything, down to the bottom of the deep blue sea, down where your heart beats so slow, and you'll never in your life have felt so free. Will you come down there with me? Down where our bodies start to seem like artifacts of some strange dream, which afterward you can't decipher, and so soon have forgotten everything." There's an invitation to follow this person, I'm not going to call her Colleen anymore as she sheds the name, into the deep blue sea, returning back to her animal heritage, if you will, her animal nature. And that's where part of the ideas come from, that it is about civilization. It's about the way that we bend who we are to fit in with those around us, how we get rid of the animalistic elements of Homo sapien to be human. But there's also a lot of concepts going on in here, and I'm sure there's a lot of metaphor I missed too. Joanna is somebody who tends to sing 3 layers deep, and I got about 1 on here, just past the surface. So there's probably a lot left to dig into. The interesting thing is, though, is that I get it in a way that I don't usually get Joanna's other songs, and I think that comes from something that Eric mentioned, said in the liner notes for this EP. Joanna writes, "These recordings were made and mixed over the course of 3 days, and at the end of a 7-week-long US tour, we all sat in a room together and recorded live and fast." This does feel like something that she didn't spend months and months refining down into a perfect poem and then putting towards music. It does feel like something that's a bit more off the cuff, which I think is even more impressive because it still carries that depth I associate with her. It is simple for Joanna, but that doesn't mean that it's simple entirely. And so even on a short time frame, she can still produce something that is both evocative from a visual and narrative standpoint, while also carrying depth and utilizing metaphor in ways to speak about things outside of the surface level story. It's quite impressive that this happened in such a short time. I don't know. It's just bonkers. And I like to tie things back to the music. And the music is this harmonious part mixed with this dissonance. It's the one thing that doesn't really fit. And I think that's supposed to tie into the way that Colleen doesn't feel like she fits in with the society that she is. She's been thrust into this world she doesn't agree with, she doesn't like. She says she hates the sight of open air. And so while she tries to fit in the best she can, the phrasing always gets a little out of whack. The accent points never quite work, and we never stay consonant harmony. We dance into the dissonant. There's always those missteps. It's actually one thing that is stated in here. When she spoke about the air, she says, I hate the sight of that empty air, like stepping for a missing stair and falling forth forever blindly. The music kind of does that, doesn't it? It gets hung up, messed up. Takes a second to find that composure and return back to the way people expect music to sound. But it never lasts for long. The oddities always come back. And it's because the music wasn't ever designed to be as harmonious as it existed on the surface. Just like Colleen was never designed to be here. As much as she tries to fit in, this is not her home environment. She is pretending, wearing a mask. And so some of the musical ideas certainly mimic this whole concept of trying to fit in a place where you just don't belong. You aren't supposed to fit in there because you weren't built for it. Those are my thoughts. Joanna Newsom's Colleen. Let me know what you thought of this track. If there's anything that stood out to you, anything you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on, maybe just have your own thoughts, opinions, and perspectives about this song. Put all that stuff down in the comments section. Above that, if you could, go into the description box, find a link to Linktree, which takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three. They help with the YouTube algorithm. That wraps it up for today, but I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.